Okay, let me just ask you about Qatar, because it's hard to know where we're even up to here. Catherine King saying what happened to those
Well, the government doesn't, that's for sure.
Yeah, the 5 Australian women was context but not a factor in decision making, but maintains that this decision was made in the national interest. Do we just accept that now?
No. We have a Senate inquiry to rightly dig into this. There are still questions to be answered about how the government was influenced, whether the Prime Minister's office had a role and what lobbying took place through that sphere, what other consultations took place across government and what other lobbying or influence was peddled across government or over the government. We need to understand actually what the grounds were. It's one thing for the government to keep repeating the words national interest, but there have to be national interest grounds for why you determine that rejecting this is not in the national interest. You've got the ridiculous proposition where Richard Marles just this morning has said we need greater competition in Australia's aviation market. Well, you don't get greater competition by saying no to a competitor having extra landing slots in Australia. That makes absolutely no sense whatsoever. So you've got the government at complete odds with one another. The Prime Minister says endlessly we've got the most competitive aviation market in the world. The Deputy Prime Minister says we need more competition in the aviation market. The Transport Minister says the treatment a number of years ago, and it was appalling treatment, I note, of a number of women through Doha Airport was a factor in the decision. Yet elsewhere, the government says they'd like to see Qatar put on more flights in secondary airports like Adelaide or bigger planes.
Should it have been a factor?
Well, we should note a couple of factors there. One is that it's not Qatar Airways that were responsible for that decision. They were actions of security at the airport. The Qatari government has subsequently addressed and apologised in relation to that, as they should. They were reprehensible acts. Well, the Australian government at the time, previous coalition government, Foreign Minister Payne at the time, made very strong representations to Qatar, as was correct.
But
Qatar
didn't you delay a decision on Qatar, this very issue, for 4 years?
There were delays undertaken while the review occurred, but ultimately a decision was also made to provide for additional access into Australia. And it was made in the interests of consumers and competition. And that's what is at the heart of this in the end.
Yeah.
Australians are paying more for airfares. Tourists are finding it harder to get to Australia, which hurts our tourism industry and jobs. Exporters will find there's less space in the bellies of aircraft to get product out of Australia. This is a lose-lose-lose situation in terms of the government's decision, and they can't explain the decision. And sometimes when you have made a decision that clearly is so wrong, it's just better for government to acknowledge they made a mistake, to review it, reconsider it and change it. And that's really what this government should be thinking. It should be acting on the Federal Labor President Wayne Swan's advice, Labor Premiers of South Australia, of Western Australia, the Acting Premier in Queensland, all of whom have said it's a bad decision. Go back to the drawing board and start again is what the Albanese government should be doing on Qatar Airways.
No sign of that happening just yet. Simon Birmingham, appreciate your time.